Right now, I can leverage trade gold 50x, actually maybe even up to 100x on some decentralized exchanges. And again, I have it in my hard wallet. So it's my money. If you decide to trade and the government doesn't like what you're doing and they go to the institution that's holding your investment accounts, they can shut you down just like that. That cannot occur with DeFi. And we're able, like I said, we're able to do that with, trading forex, some commodities, and it's just growing more and more.
Is it possible for a client or somebody, an investor, whatever, to own 100% of the tokens? And if they do they retain the asset at that point, or do you still retain the asset?
So when you buy the token, you're buying the economic rights. You don't actually own the asset. And so that's something that you got to make clear, because let's say, for instance, you don't have what's called governance with these tokens. You could, but in our particular project, we didn't, because we wanted to make sure that we have control of the guidance for now on these particular properties, in terms of selling it and all that stuff. But you could have governance where people could say, hey, look, we all vote to sell this property, liquidate it, and then give us the actual cash. But that's not the case here. But they can, at any given point in time, if they want to, put it up on the marketplace, and as long as they're buyers, they'll be able to buy or sell.
Very cool. Very cool.
I know we have Natasha's going into some tax questions, which I don't think we want to go down too much of the road because obviously depends on where you live and what country you're in and what state you're in, all that stuff varies. But I don't believe that you could do like a 1031 exchange where, like, if you sell another property, then you start putting into the crypto to buy other properties. I don't know how the government would kind of view that, because you don't, like you said, they don't actually own the deed of that product of that property, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you can do a 1031 exchange, and I think that there's a minimum, because I've done a lot of buying and selling of real estate. I think that there is a minimum that you do have to have in order to roll into a 1031 exchange. But I haven't gone that far yet. We just tokenized our first 4, and it was offshore. So you're probably going to have much different tax implications from, Panama than you are buying land or real estate domestically in the United States, which we plan on doing, but we just see a lot more opportunity outside the United States right now, based off of a lot of the research that we did.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think the government is about 10 years behind everything in general. So as something like that picks up, as something becomes more popular, regulations, rules, all that stuff could probably start, and most likely will change at some point. Speaking of the government, so I know the Fed has the federal backed coin that they're doing. How does that compete with anything in the crypto space? And would that be considered more safe in your view than having some of these other coins?
Yeah, so I don't know. Let me ask you, Dan. Do you trust the government these days?
This is publicly published. So yes, I do. I absolutely 1,000. Why wouldn't I? It doesn't make sense.
Look, here's the thing. They put lipstick on a pig, right? Because all this old rules are still there. The government, these are called central backed digital currencies, right? Or CBDCs. And so the government essentially is just finding ways to process transactions faster, which, if you take a look at it, like, let's say, for instance, your JP Morgan Chase transactions, while they don't clear instantly, you as the end user, you really don't know, right? You're all using digital currencies right now, every time you swipe your card or buy something online. And so for them to come out with this thing going like, oh, look, we got our own cryptocurrency. A lot of people need to understand that there's a lot of danger behind a CBDC. And that's why a lot of these, new candidates are coming out super against it, because, crypto is programmable money. And so let's say, for instance, Dan, you don't agree with, Donald Trump or Joe Biden. It doesn't matter, right? and just like they did last year with the trucker rally, and they go, oh, you don't agree with us, or you're protesting for too long, we're going to cut your bank account off, or we're going to start siphoning money out of your wallet. They'll be able to do that with digital currencies, as opposed to, like, let's say Bitcoin or Ethereum. You can't do that. They're fully decentralized. And unless they have access to your keys, the government ain't touching your money. And that's the thing that I really like about it, because, we're grownups. Why do we need, Big Brother surveilling us, or having so much control that any given point in time they can, take money out of your wallet? I'm definitely not a proponent for that, and I definitely see the securities issues from the consumer standpoint, as a citizen, where the government could really take advantage of that and exploit it. So there are definitely other options. PayPal just launched a new stable coin. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. I did a webinar on it on YouTube the other day. And I think that is a better proposal than having the government directly intervene, because anytime, in my opinion, the government intervenes, like you said, you were being generous, I think, by saying 10 years behind. But the government just really mucks everything up. And I think that the private sector, us, the citizens, the entrepreneurs, are going to do a much better job at creating efficient markets than the government is. It was a little long-winded answer, but
no, I think you're spot on. Yep.
Yeah.
Are there any other upcoming markets that I just want to kind of step back a bit to the real estate example? Are there any other markets that are going to be tokenized kind of like that and will be working that way that people can dip their toes into?
Yeah. So there's something called, like, you'll hear this more and more pop up, RWAs, or real world assets. And so a lot of these, and especially after, the fall of Silicon Valley Bank, which was holding about $3 billion of USDC's reserves. And USDC, again, is a stable coin. And we rely heavily on stable coins. We need to make sure that peg stays 1-to-1, and that they're never able to have a bank run. But what's happening now is a lot of these stable coin providers, especially the more decentralized ones, are starting to create accounts directly with the Fed, and they're establishing their own T-bills short term, so that in case there is a bank run, that they will be lit enough to pay for it. Unlike, again, a lot of these 700 and some regional banks that had these issues. But there's a lot of tech that's coming out that is definitely including real world assets. Another use case is gold. Right now, I can leverage trade gold 50x, actually maybe even up to 100x on some decentralized exchanges. And again, I have it in my hard wallet. So it's my money. If you decide to trade and the government doesn't like what you're doing and they go to the institution that's holding your investment accounts, they can shut you down just like that. That cannot occur with DeFi. And we're able, like I said, we're able to do that with, trading forex, some commodities, and it's just growing more and more. And so a lot of these digital assets, or a lot of these traditional assets, are now coming onto the blockchain, and we're going to be trading them 24/7. And so there's a lot of really incredible stuff coming up with DeFi that I think people are just like, oh, the price of Bitcoin or Pepe or Sheeb, these meme coins that are just mindless, that people are putting too much focus on there and ignoring where the real technology is. Because when you take a look at like what BlackRock's doing, what JP Morgan Chase, they're already starting to build their own decentralized finance networks, and they're building it on public blockchains. And so it's going to be really exciting to see what happens like in the coming 3-4 years.
So you talked about your hard wallet, and I want you to give a little explanation of what the difference is. So what a hard wallet is, just for people that don't know what it is. Today's day and age, that might be small, but I'm kind of curious how you actually take the cryptocurrency that you have on your hard wallet and actually use it for speculative trading, for instance, without accumulating a whole bunch of transfer fees?
Essentially, you're able to do that with less fees, right? So less transfer fees, especially when you go into the layer 2. So what's like a layer 2? So you have layer 1, which is Ethereum, Bitcoin, Polkadot. These are all Solana. These are all layer 1 blockchains. Okay. Then we have layer 2 blockchains that sit on top of like, let's say, the Ethereum network, which is the most popular one. And so you have layer 2 networks like, let's say, Optimism or Arbitrum, which are the most popular ones right now, and Matic being built on the Ethereum network. And instead of going through the Ethereum network, because it is very costly to be on the Ethereum, although there is the most amount of volume there, you can go to these secondary blockchains that are built on top, where the fees are less than 1 cent per transaction. And so, that's where I play, and that's where I teach a lot of my students, because, why pay these exorbitant amounts unless you're dealing with like 6 figures per transaction? In some cases, it's just not worth, I should say mid 5 figures. It's just not worth transacting on the Ethereum network unless there's like no offering on these other layer 2 solutions. But the majority of the action is happening on the layer 2. And I mean, the transactions are absolutely nominal, and you're going to pay way less there than you would in, traditional brokerage, or just transferring money, or even a traditional centralized exchange, such as like the NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, and all that stuff, by having very low fees and being able to transact. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that's up and coming on layer 2s, and that's a narrative that I'm really and heavily invested in right now.
No, that's super cool. Can you talk a little bit more about adding liquidity? Because you mentioned that earlier in the very beginning, and when we started talking about making a lot of income from actually providing liquidity.
Yeah. So when you provide liquidity, I like to use my NASDAQ Apple example. So let's say, for instance, you've got liquidity on the NASDAQ, right? And if you want to go buy, you have to go through your broker, but that broker goes to the NASDAQ to buy those stocks. And you need 2 things in order for a market to be liquid. You need, the asset, and you need cash, right? And so what happens is these exchanges or institutions, because a lot of the money is lent, and a lot of the stock is lent from, Goldman Sachs or BlackRock, or these huge entities, JP Morgan Chase, they lend these assets, and every single time a trade takes place, there's a fee that's taken out. Now, a lot of people say, well, but hold on, I don't pay fees on Robinhood, or I pay very little fees on TD Ameritrade. Yeah, that might be true, but if you're not paying them, somebody else is. And, like the old saying says, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product, right? And so a lot of these hedge funds are basically taking that data and going, hey, we're going to pay for your fees, but they're either trading with or against you. And that's another thing that, I'm vehemently against. But essentially, make no mistake about it, somebody is paying for those fees, and those exchanges are making billions of dollars per year based on the amount of transactions that flow through there, right? But, the NASDAQ isn't going to call, Tracy up and go, hey, Tracy, you want to give me some of your Apple stock and some cash and make a transaction fee off every single sale? That said no exchange ever, right? Well, now we've got these decentralized exchanges that are governed by, again, smart contracts, where instead of putting up, let's say, Apple and cash, I'm putting up Bitcoin and USDC, or I'm putting up Ethereum and Bitcoin. And anytime there is an exchange between those two, peer-to-peer now, because anybody can do this as long as they have the right knowledge, what ends up happening is I end up making those fees. And that's how I made, I really tore it up. I dollar cost averaged in, about, I would say $160,000 over 6 months, 6 to 7 months, back in 2020. And I turned that into $2 million. And it wasn't because I was super smart in trading. I was just being the institution or the bank by providing the liquidity. So, and every time a trade was made, I made that money. And then what happened was I was making more in Ethereum, more in Bitcoin. And when the price rose, that's where it was just like, oh my gosh, there was one month I made like $500,000 because I had accumulated so much and the bull market was just in full swing. And so this is something that we still teach, and we have, a lot of tools to show people exactly how to do this, because in my opinion, it's still one of the most valuable ones. And there's no mistake as to why the NASDAQ is so huge and there's not a whole bunch of exchanges popping up that allowed to do this, because it's very profitable. And now we're able to do it.
Is this different than staking?
100% very different than staking.
Okay.
Yeah. So staking is a much different thing. And right now, we've got something called LSDs, and it's not the drug, LSDFi, which is liquid staking derivatives. But when you stake, like this narrative became very, very popular with Ethereum last year, when they went from proof of work, meaning you had to have like a machine processing the transactions. It went from that to being verified by stakers. So as long as you had enough Ethereum staked and locked up, you were going to receive part of the fees that were being taken out for every transaction that went on the Ethereum network. And so a lot of people now are staking their Ethereum, and they're earning anywhere between like 3 to 5% in a relatively safe manner. Now, in my opinion, when you talk about staking, there's really some very, very lucrative ways to hyper compound and do different flywheels to where you can almost triple that amount of money using some very creative, safe DeFi protocols by doing borrowing and lending and all sorts of really cool things. To where you take, again, that 3 to 5% and you turn it into like 8 to 15% per year annually by contributing your Ethereum to the network. But there's all sorts of other staking blockchains, just like, Matic, Solana is another one, Cardano is another one. And so it's a very popular thing because it's not so energy intensive like Bitcoin is.
We had a win in the chat a little bit ago. I know he's being nice, so he's not asking for himself because he already knows everything about crypto, but he's saying for other people besides himself that might find this lingo a little complicated and might not really understand it. Where would you suggest that somebody would go to learn a little bit more about this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, we teach it very, very in depth, and we start off. I'm trying to give as much info without going too technical, but it's hard sometimes. But we have definitely a 6-week course where we start off from the very, very basic. What is a cryptocurrency? It's a transfer of value. How do we stay away from scams and fraud? How do you protect your hard wallet? How do you store your wallets correctly so you don't get ripped off? And we've got students, all the way from 21-year-olds to 75-year-old retirees that we take on, and all of them have, different skill sets and different levels. But definitely like that. Or you can do it the way I did it. You go to YouTube University and, it's like, but I equate that to like being dropped in the middle of the ocean and somebody going, okay, learn how to swim now,
Yeah.
But we're definitely not the only guys on the block, but there are a few of us right now because, DeFi is still relatively small. I think there's only, maybe $200 or $300 billion in DeFi currently. But as that grows, I'm sure the competition will get a little more rigorous, but I would definitely find somebody who understands this to teach you, because, going through YouTube and, I went through YouTube when DeFi was just starting in the summer of 2020. So it was relatively easy to find like very specific information. Now it would be like just drinking water from a fire hose, in my opinion. So yeah.
The information's out there. It's just a matter of finding it, putting it all together, putting it in the correct order, and making probably a lot of mistakes along the way. So it's
exactly.
YouTube could be rough sometimes.
And we'll also put all of Gven's contact information and details. They'll be in the description of the video. So you can definitely check that out when you have a chance. So no, Gven, is there any other, I guess, tips you would suggest for any individual that is looking to dip their toes into the DeFi space?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing, and this goes for TradFi too, because there's a lot of, man, I'm telling you, there's a lot of fraud. Like I just had one student that reached out to me, and he found out some of our team members' names, and this fraudster started hitting him up, and he wired them $32,500. And so wow. I would say this, I would say if you're getting into anything financial, you want to make sure that your security is tip top, because especially if you're going to become your own bank, which is what we kind of teach, right? You need to make sure that you've got bank-like security. And a lot of things like SIM swapping, I'm sure you guys have heard of it, where they swap out the SIM and they start using your phone. And they start getting into your institutions and start wiring money out. Some people don't even know that all of this is happening. And before they know it, their money in their bank accounts are being wiped out. Their money in their institution accounts are being wiped out. And so it's really important, in my opinion, that you do have security, number one. And then also like really learn about the scams, because there are so many scams nowadays. And, and even in TradFi, again, like so many forex scams, and they use crypto. So like educate yourself first in regards to that, because that's a lot of people lose a lot of money up front. And then they eventually make their way to us. And then we're like, yeah, shoot, we wish we would have been here, because we would have shown you what not to do. But in my opinion, that's where you start. And that's why, lesson one for us starts at that.
Perfect.
Yeah. No, be careful anything you do. I figured out the safest way though. If you just don't have any money, they can't take anything. So I got it all figured out.
Dude, I lived in the jungle last year, Dan, in the middle of the jungle in Costa Rica. And I'm not even kidding you, man. We had like maybe 3 neighbors, and 2 of them were monkeys. All right. And so they weren't going to find us there. I don't think they weren't going to find. Yeah. Wynn says he's going back to gold shillings. So it's, yeah. You just got to make sure that you're keeping up with security, and that to me is so important nowadays, for everything. I mean, if you're in DeFi, crypto, or TradFi, just make sure your security is tipped, because that's where a lot of stuff is happening nowadays, and it just blows my mind how sophisticated these bad actors keep getting. So.
Yeah, I've told this story before, but my last experience in cryptocurrency ended in a massive loss. And that was with the whole, what do they call it? Quadriga thing that happened in Canada. So I always practice safe practices with my cryptocurrency. I literally transferred 4 Bitcoin over to Quadriga, and the very next day they went bankrupt and the website was closed. I was trying to get some fiat currency off of there, and that was the only exchange that I could use in Canada to convert my Bitcoin to cryptocurrency. Oh, wow. And I lost every last crypto piece that I had in there. It was gone. So
wow.
Yeah, and that was literal. I mean, that's just luck, right? I didn't have it on there I used it 2 years earlier to bring fiat into the market, and then I was trying to use it to get the Bitcoin off of the market. But yeah, that's just the way it goes, right? So
yeah, well, yeah. And remember this, Tracy. Remember, that's still traditional finance, in my opinion, right? Because you're sending it to a centralized authority. But
yeah,
go ahead.
Is it centralized? Because I don't. I mean, it was not government. Nobody. It was a guy.
Yeah.
A guy that had the I don't know. But I understand what you mean, because it's not. I guess not on the blockchain. Yeah.
Yeah. Anytime you send your crypto or money to a guy or an entity, you now go to the centralized, in my opinion, traditional finance. And so again, another thing that we teach is how to get that money off safely and securely to where, you can use it. And I've got a Visa card now where I can spend my crypto. In fact, I have 3. And I have different banking relationships with banks to where I send the crypto directly to that bank. And I'm able to start spending it within minutes. And so there's all sorts of really cool new ways that, as opposed to like the days of Quadriga or, back when I first started, it was only Coinbase that you could wire the money and it would take 3 days. And I mean, if you were in a jam, you were in some serious, stuff. So there's a lot of really cool things that are coming up with Visa and MasterCard, where you're going to be able to actually spend directly on your own crypto card, no third-party merchant. So this stuff is coming whether they like it or not. And I think that it's going to be a force to reckon with. So
super cool. Well, Gven, it has been wonderful having you on the show. We are out of time, unfortunately. These hours just aren't long enough for us, but
I know.
Yeah. So I super appreciate you being here. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. Both you and Dan. Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. Appreciate having you on. Ladies and gentlemen, type a quick 1 in that chat for Gven. And for everybody watching this Pivot Podcast, we appreciate you guys joining us each and every week. If you guys have not seen the other videos, just click the one up there. They'll take you to the link. You guys can watch all the past seasons, past episodes. You guys are incredible, and we'll catch you guys next episode. Later, guys.